June 11th, 1944, 5 days after D-Day, a hedgerow-lined cattle path, somewhere southeast of Saint-Ymer-Ries, Normandy. The rain had stopped an hour ago, but the water hadn't gone anywhere. It sat in the wheel ruts and shell craters, and in the folds of every man's uniform, cold and heavy and grey, like the sky above the bocage. 12 men of a rifle squad from the 90th Infantry Division moved in a staggered column along the edge of a dirt lane, so narrow that the hedgerows on either side almost touched overhead, turning the path into a tunnel of twisted root and branch. Nobody spoke. The only sounds were boots sucking against mud, the faint clink of canteen against cartridge belt, and somewhere ahead, somewhere always ahead, the dull, irregular thud of artillery, working over a village none of them could see. Private First Class Dale Whitcomb walked fifth in the column. He was 21 years old, from Chillicothe, Ohio, and he carried the thing that made him different from every other man in the squad. Slung across his body, its bipod folded against the barrel, its stock dark with oil and rain, was a Browning automatic rifle, the M1918A2, 20 pounds of steel and walnut, a weapon that could cycle between 300 and 600 rounds per minute, the single most important firearm in the entire 12-man formation, and the reason Dale Whitcomb, whether he thought about it or not, had a target on his back the size of France. Behind Whitcomb walked Private Jimmy Tenaglia, his assistant. Tenaglia carried his own M1 Garand, plus a cotton bandolier stuffed with 12 additional 20-round magazines for the BAR. That was 240 extra rounds, heavy, awkward, indispensable. The two men had trained together at Fort Dix, crossed the Atlantic on the same transport, landed on Utah Beach within minutes of each other, and now moved through the Normandy hedgerows in a kind of grim symbiosis. Whitcomb fired. Tenaglia fed him. That was the arrangement. That was the entire tactical architecture of the American rifle squad, distilled down to 2 men and 1 weapon. And that was exactly what the Germans on the other side of the bocage had been trained to destroy. You need to understand something about the American infantry squad in 1944, something that the men in it understood in their bones, even if they never read a field manual. The squad was not a collection of equals. On paper, yes, every rifleman mattered. 11 men carried the semi-automatic M1 Garand, a magnificent weapon in its own right. 8 rounds, clip-fed, accurate, fast. But the Garand was a semi-automatic rifle. 1 trigger pull, 1 bullet. It could not lay down the kind of continuous, hammering, suppressive fire that pinned an enemy behind cover and allowed the rest of the squad to maneuver. Only 1 weapon in the squad could do that, the BAR. The entire offensive capability of the 12-man American rifle squad pivoted on this single automatic weapon and the single man who carried it. Army doctrine was explicit. The squad attacks as 2 elements, a fire element built around the BAR, and a maneuver element of riflemen who advance under the BAR's covering fire. Take away the BAR, and the fire element collapses. Take away the BAR gunner, and you don't just lose 1 man. You lose the suppressive base that keeps every other man alive long enough to close with the enemy. The Germans knew this, not abstractly, not theoretically. They knew it the way a predator knows which animal in the herd to chase, instinctively, efficiently, and without hesitation. Somewhere beyond the hedgerow to the squad's left, in a shallow fighting position, scraped into the base of an earthen embankment, a German grenadier of the 350th 3rd Infantry Division, steadied his carabiner 90, 8K, and waited. He had been taught one lesson above all others about fighting the Americans. Find the automatic weapon. Kill that man first. Everything else becomes easier after that. He was looking for Dale Whitcomb. He just didn't know his name. The ambush came the way ambushes always came in the bokeh. Suddenly, from nowhere, from everywhere. A burst of MG. 40. Two fire ripped through the canopy of branches overhead, shredding leaves into green confetti. Then rifle shots. Sharp and distinct, snapping from behind the hedgerow to the left. The squad scattered. Men threw themselves into the shallow ditches on either side of the lane, faces pressed into the mud, hands clutching helmets against the back of their heads as rounds cracked overhead. Whitcomb didn't go flat. He couldn't. That wasn't his job. He dropped to one knee at the base of the hedgerow, shouldered the BAR, and began to fire in controlled bursts toward the muzzle flashes. 3 rounds, pause, 3 rounds, pause. The weapon bucking hard against his shoulder, brass casing spinning into the mud beside him. The sound of the BAR was unmistakable, not the slow, deliberate crack of a Garand, not the tearing fabric shriek of the MG-40, too. It was something in between, a heavy, rhythmic hammering, authoritative and blunt, like a fist pounding on a steel door. Everyone on the battlefield could hear it. Everyone on the battlefield could locate it. And that was the curse. The moment Whitcomb opened fire, he announced himself. He became, in the calculus of German small unit tactics, priority target 1. Wehrmacht training manuals, known as Ausbildungsvorschrift, were explicit on this point. When engaging an American infantry squad, the first task of every rifleman and machine gunner was to identify the soldier carrying the automatic weapon. He would be the one with the longer, heavier weapon. He would often be near another man, carrying extra ammunition, and he would be the one firing in bursts. Find him, fix him, kill him. Because once the BAR went silent, the American squad became a group of men with semi-automatic rifles, still dangerous, yes, but no longer capable of delivering the volume of fire necessary to suppress a prepared position. Without the BAR, the Americans could not maneuver. Without the BAR, the Americans could not attack. Without the BAR, the squad became survivable. 3 rounds struck the hedgerow inches from Whitcomb's head, spraying him with dirt and root fragments. A 4th punched through the loose fabric of his field jacket at the shoulder, without touching skin. Tenaglia crawled forward, shoved a fresh magazine into Whitcomb's hand, and Whitcomb slammed it home without looking down. 20 more rounds, maybe 4 seconds of fire. That was the BAR's other curse, the 20-round magazine. Too small for a sustained automatic weapon. The gunner was always reloading, always exposed during the reload, always burning through ammunition faster than it could be replaced. Veterans of the European theater would later speak about the BAR with a strange mixture of reverence and dread. Being handed the weapon was a contradiction that every man who carried it understood. Your sergeant gave you the BAR because he trusted you, trusted your marksmanship, your nerve, your willingness to stay up and firing when every instinct screamed at you to get down. It was a mark of respect. It meant you were considered the most reliable man in the squad. It also meant, statistically, that you were more likely to be killed or wounded than any other man in the formation. The life expectancy of a BAR gunner in sustained combat was measured in days, sometimes hours. Squads rotated the weapon when they could, passing it from man to man, not because anyone wanted it, but because no one man could be expected to carry that burden, that target indefinitely. And yet something happened to men who carried the BAR. They became attached to it, possessive even. They understood, in a way no one else in the squad fully could, that their weapon was the squad, that without them firing, the other 10 men were exposed, pinned helpless. There was a terrible, almost sacred responsibility in that. Dale Whitcomb, kneeling in the mud of a Normandy cattle path, with bullets snapping past his skull, understood it the way every BAR gunner understood it. You don't stop firing. You don't go flat. You stay up. You keep the trigger down. Because if you stop, they die. The German grenadier in the fighting position adjusted his aim. He had found the automatic weapon. He could see the muzzle flash through the hedge. He steadied the carabiner, exhaled slowly, and placed his finger on the trigger. Across the hedgerow, Whitcomb slammed home another magazine. 20 more rounds. He had no idea he'd already been found. He only knew what every BAR gunner knew, that the moment he started firing, someone on the other side was looking for him. Someone was always looking for him. But here's what most people never talk about. The BAR wasn't the only weapon that turned its own carrier into a walking target. There was another role in the American infantry, one even more dangerous, even more isolated, where the man carrying the equipment knew with near certainty that he would not survive his first week in combat. And the reason why has been almost completely forgotten. If you want to know what that role was, and why the army kept sending men into it anyway, subscribe to WW2 Forgotten 45 and turn on notifications. Because that story is coming next, and it's one that deserves to be remembered.